He had seen every kind of performance imaginable, but when she walked onto that stage with grace that defied everything the world had told her was impossible, Simon Cowell realized he was about to witness a redefinition of what it means to be beautiful. The America's Got Talent Theatre thrummed with its signature electric energy, the kind of charged atmosphere that came from hundreds of dreams converging under bright lights and rolling cameras. The judges sat in their familiar positions, Simon Cowell's sharp silhouette cutting against the dramatic backdrop, as he maintained that trademark expression of skeptical attention that had become his hallmark over decades of evaluating hopeful performers. Tonight felt like any other Tuesday evening of auditions. The production schedule was running smoothly. The acts had provided a good mix of comedy, music, and spectacle, and the audience was responding enthusiastically to the variety of talent crossing the stage. Simon scanned his notes, mentally tracking commercial breaks and time slots, already thinking ahead to the evening's wrap-up and the contestant callbacks that would determine who advanced to the next round. But in the wings, where dreams either flourished or died under the unforgiving pressure of public judgment, something extraordinary was preparing to unfold, something that would challenge every assumption Simon had ever made about perfection, beauty, and the relationship between physical wholeness and artistic excellence. Her name was Sophia Chen, 32 years old, and she was wearing a flowing white dress that moved like liquid moonlight when she walked. Her dark hair was pulled back in the classic ballerina bun she had worn since childhood, secured with bobby pins that had become as natural to her as breathing. In her hands, she carried a single red rose, its petals perfect except for the slight bruising where her fingers had gripped it too tightly during the long hours of waiting in the green tent behind the stage. To anyone watching from a distance, Sophia looked like the embodiment of classical elegance, the kind of dancer who belonged in the grand theaters of New York or London, performing for audiences who understood the years of discipline required to achieve such natural grace. But hidden beneath the flowing fabric of her dress was a story that had redefined everything Sophia thought she knew about identity, purpose, and the courage required to continue dancing when the music threatens to stop forever. Sophia had not always been a contestant on a television talent show. 7 years ago, she had been a principal dancer with the American Ballet Theatre, one of only 12 women in the world to hold that prestigious title. She had performed Odette in Swan Lake at Lincoln Center, had danced Juliet at the Metropolitan Opera House, and had been featured on magazine covers as one of the most promising young ballerinas of her generation. Her apartment in Manhattan had been filled with pointe shoes and performance photographs, awards, and reviews that chronicled a career built on 15,000 hours of practice, countless sacrifices, and the kind of single-minded dedication that transforms children into artists. She had lived on salads and protein bars, had endured injuries that would have sidelined most athletes, and had maintained the physical discipline required to make the impossible look effortless, night after night. Ballet had been Sophia's language since she was 4 years old, when her mother had enrolled her in beginner classes to help with her shyness and coordination. What had started as childhood activity had quickly revealed itself as something closer to destiny. Sophia's body seemed designed for ballet, her natural turnout and extension marking her as someone born to inhabit the space between earth and air that defines classical dance. By age 10, she was studying at the School of American Ballet. By 15, she was apprenticing with professional companies. By 20, she had been offered a contract with ABT that represented the culmination of every dream she had ever harbored about her future. For 12 years, Sophia's life had been defined by performance schedules, rehearsal calls, and the constant pursuit of technical perfection. She had sacrificed romantic relationships, social connections, and financial security for the privilege of spending her evenings on stage, transforming stories into movement for audiences who understood they were witnessing something approaching magic. But at 25, Sophia had begun noticing a persistent ache in her left leg that couldn't be explained by normal dance injuries. What had initially felt like muscle strain had gradually intensified into something that disrupted her sleep and affected her ability to execute the demanding technical elements that defined her repertoire. The diagnosis had come on a Tuesday morning in October, delivered by an oncologist who spoke in careful, measured phrases about osteosarcoma, aggressive treatment protocols, and the statistical likelihood of limb preservation versus amputation. Sophia had sat in the sterile examination room, still wearing her warm-up clothes from morning class, trying to process words that seemed to belong to someone else's life. Bone cancer. Stage 3. Located in the fibula and tibia of her left leg, exactly where she generated the power for her jumps, the stability for her balances, the foundation for everything that had defined her identity for 21 years. The treatment had been as brutal as the disease. 6 months of chemotherapy that had stolen her hair, her energy, and her ability to maintain the physical condition required for professional dance. Surgery that had removed sections of bone and replaced them with titanium rods that would never feel like part of her body. Radiation therapy that had left her skin burned and sensitive, unable to tolerate the friction of point shoes. Against flesh, but it was the amputation that had finally ended her career with ABT. Despite the aggressive treatment, the cancer had continued spreading, threatening not just her leg, but her life. The choice had been presented with medical clarity: lose the leg below the knee or risk losing everything. Sophia had chosen to live, but in making that choice, she had believed she was also choosing to stop dancing forever. The months following the amputation had been the darkest period of her life. Learning to walk with a prosthetic limb, adapting to a body that felt foreign and unreliable, grieving not just for her lost career but for the part of her identity that had been amputated along with her leg. She had avoided mirrors, avoided music, avoided anything that reminded her of the world she could no longer inhabit. Her physical therapist, Dr. Maria Santos, had been the first person to suggest that Sophia's dancing career might not be over, just transformed. Dr. Santos worked with amputee athletes and had seen how adaptive technology could restore function that seemed permanently lost. "Your muscle memory is still there," Dr. Santos had explained during a particularly difficult session when Sophia was struggling to maintain her balance on the uneven parallel bars. "Your technique, your artistry, your understanding of movement, none of that was in your leg. That's in your heart, your mind, your connection to music." The idea had seemed ridiculous at first. How could someone dance without the full use of both legs? How could someone maintain the ethereal quality that defined ballet when half of their foundation was made of carbon fiber and mechanical joints? But slowly, carefully, Dr. Santos had helped Sophia explore what was possible, rather than focusing on what had been lost. They had worked on balance exercises that gradually became more complex, incorporating arm movements that evolved into port de bras, experimenting with weight shifts that began to resemble the controlled movements of classical technique. The breakthrough had come during a session when Dr. Santos had played Debussy's Clair de Lune, the music that had accompanied one of Sophia's most memorable performances as Odette. Without conscious decision, Sophia had begun moving to the melody, her body remembering choreography that lived deeper than physical limitation. For the first time since her diagnosis, Sophia had felt like a dancer again. The journey back to performance had taken 2 years of adaptive training, working with prosthetists who understood the specific demands of dance, learning new techniques for generating power and maintaining balance, adapting classical choreography to accommodate her changed body without sacrificing its essential beauty. Sophia had performed her first post-amputation solo at a small charity event for cancer survivors, dancing to the same Debussy piece that had marked her return to movement. The standing ovation had lasted for 8 minutes, but more importantly, Sophia had rediscovered something she thought she had lost forever. The transcendent feeling of becoming music made visible, but performing for a small audience of cancer survivors was different from auditioning for America's Got Talent, where millions of viewers would judge whether her adaptive dance qualified as entertainment worth celebrating. Sophia had spent months debating whether to audition, uncertain whether the world was ready to see beauty that didn't conform to traditional expectations. The decision had been made for her when she received a letter from a 12-year-old girl named Emma, who had seen a video of Sophia's charity performance online. Emma was a young ballet student who had lost her leg in a car accident and had been told by well-meaning adults that she would need to find a new hobby. "I want to dance like you," Emma had written. "Can you teach me that it's okay to be different but still beautiful?" Reading that letter, Sophia understood that her audition wasn't about personal validation or career resurrection. It was about proving to Emma and to everyone who had been told they were too broken to be beautiful that grace has nothing to do with physical perfection. The stage manager approached her in the wings. "Miss Chen, you're up." Sophia nodded, adjusting the prosthetic beneath her dress and checking that her point shoe was properly secured over the specialized attachment that connected her foot to the mechanical ankle joint. She had practiced this transition from walking to performance hundreds of times, but standing here in the wings of America's Got Talent, she realized that no amount of preparation could ready someone for the moment when private struggle becomes public art. She walked onto the stage carrying 7 years of adaptation, a rose that represented both beauty and thorns, and the kind of courage that transforms broken things into something more beautiful than they ever were when whole. The audience's initial reaction was curious but warm, applauding for someone who clearly belonged to the world of professional dance. Sophia moved with the unmistakable bearing of a trained ballerina, her carriage and arm positions immediately identifying her as someone with serious classical training. Simon leaned forward, his attention piqued by something he couldn't immediately identify. This contestant felt different from the typical dance acts they saw, more polished, more professional, carrying herself with a gravity that suggested significant experience. "Hello," Simon said, his voice carrying clearly across the theater. "What's your name?" "Sophia Chen." Her voice was clear and strong, carrying traces of the projection and breath control that had been drilled into her during years of performing for large theaters without amplification. "And what's your background, Sophia?" Sophia looked down at the rose in her hands, then directly at Simon. "I was a principal dancer with American Ballet Theatre for 7 years. I performed at Lincoln Center, the Met, venues around the world." The audience murmured with interest. Here was someone with serious credentials, not just another hopeful amateur. "That's quite impressive," Simon noted. "And what brings you to our stage?" Sophia's expression grew more serious, more vulnerable. 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, bone cancer. After fighting it for 2 years, I had to have my left leg amputated below the knee. The murmuring stopped immediately. The casual energy shifted into something more focused, more respectful. "I was told that my dancing career was over," Sophia continued. "That ballet requires physical perfection, and I was no longer perfect. But I want to show that beauty doesn't require wholeness, that grace can exist in broken things." Simon felt something shift in his chest, recognition that this audition was about to transcend entertainment and become something more significant. "You're going to dance for us tonight," Simon said, not as a question, but as an acknowledgement of the courage it had taken to reach this moment. "I'm gonna dance my truth," Sophia replied. "A piece I choreographed called Phoenix Rising. It's about finding wings in the ashes of what you thought you lost." She moved to center stage, setting the rose carefully at her feet, and assumed the starting position for her piece. The theater fell completely silent, everyone sensing they were about to witness something extraordinary. The music began, a haunting piano piece that seemed to emerge from silence itself. Sophia's first movements were small, contained, as if she were awakening from a long sleep. Her arms moved with the fluid precision of classical ballet, but there was something more personal in her interpretation, something that spoke of actual awakening, actual resurrection. As the music intensified, Sophia's movements grew larger, more dynamic. She performed jumps and turns that should have been impossible with a prosthetic leg, but her technique was so refined, her artistry so compelling, that the mechanical nature of her ankle became irrelevant. Simon found himself mesmerized. This wasn't adaptive dance or inspirational performance. This was virtuosic artistry that happened to be performed by someone who had overcome extraordinary circumstances. Sophia wasn't dancing despite her amputation, She was dancing through it, transforming limitation into a new kind of power. The piece reached its climax with a sequence of turns that culminated in a balance that seemed to defy gravity. Sophia stood on point on her prosthetic leg, her arms creating lines that spoke of flight, of transcendence, of beauty that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional expectation. As the final notes faded, Sophia held her position for a long moment, then gracefully descended and picked up the rose from where she had placed it at the beginning. She looked directly at the judges, her breathing controlled despite the physical demands of what she had just performed. The silence that followed was profound. The audience seemed unsure whether to respond with applause or something more reverent. What they had just witnessed felt too sacred for ordinary recognition. Then Simon did something unprecedented. He stood up from the judges' table and began walking toward the stage. The other judges looked at him in surprise. The audience watched in fascination, but Simon's focus was entirely on Sophia, who remained in her final position, watching him approach with a mixture of curiosity and hope. Simon climbed onto the stage and walked to where Sophia stood. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The judge who had seen thousands of performances, and the dancer who had redefined what performance could be. "Sophia," Simon said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want to tell you something." She waited, still holding her rose. "In 15 years of judging talent competitions, I have never seen a more beautiful demonstration of what true artistry means," Simon said. "You didn't just perform a dance, you performed a transformation. You showed us that broken doesn't mean less beautiful, it means differently beautiful." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but she maintained her dancer's composure. "You came here tonight, and proved that perfection isn't about having all your pieces," Simon continued. "It's about using whatever pieces you have to create something that didn't exist before you made it." Simon turned to address the entire theater. This woman lost her leg to cancer. She was told her dancing career was over. Instead of accepting that limitation, she redefined what dancing could be. She turned her disability into a different kind of ability. The audience began to applaud, but Simon raised his hand for silence. "But here's what impressed me most," he said. "You didn't dance like someone overcoming a disability. You danced like an artist sharing her truth. Your technique was flawless. Your artistry was profound. Your message was universal." Simon looked directly into the main camera. "To everyone watching who has been told they're too broken, too different, too imperfect to pursue their dreams, Sophia Chen just proved that you've been told a lie. Beauty isn't about conforming to someone else's idea of perfect. It's about transforming your truth into art." He turned back to Sophia. "I want to do something I've never done before. I'm not just giving you a golden buzzer, I'm giving you a platform. I want to help you create a foundation that teaches adaptive dance to young people who have been told they can't pursue their dreams because of physical differences." Sophia could barely speak through her tears. "You would do that?" "I would be honored to do that," Simon replied. "Because what you've shown us tonight isn't just entertainment. It's proof that the human spirit is more powerful than any limitation the world can impose." As the golden buzzer activated and confetti fell around them, Simon offered Sophia his arm, the way a partner would in a classical pas de deux. Together, they took a bow to the standing ovation that filled the theater. After the cameras stopped rolling, Simon sat with Sophia in her dressing room, learning more about her journey from principal dancer to adaptive artist to advocate. "You know what moved me most about your performance?" Simon asked. "It wasn't the fact that you can dance with a prosthetic leg, though that's remarkable. It was that you danced with the same joy, the same passion that you must have had before your diagnosis. You didn't let your circumstances diminish your art." Sophia nodded, adjusting the prosthetic that had allowed her to return to the world she thought she had lost forever. "I learned that my identity as a dancer wasn't in my leg. It was in my love of movement, my connection to music, my desire to tell stories through my body. Those things survived the amputation." Simon realized he had learned something profound about the nature of talent, resilience, and the difference between what we think we need and what we actually need to create art. 6 months later, the Sophia Chen Foundation held its first summer intensive for young dancers with physical differences. 12 children aged 8 to 18 spent 2 weeks learning that ballet, jazz, contemporary, and hip-hop dance could be adapted to accommodate any body, any limitation, any difference. Emma, the 12-year-old who had written to Sophia, was among the first students. By the end of the intensive, she was performing on point with her prosthetic leg, proving that dreams don't require perfect bodies, they just require determined hearts. Sophia returned to professional performing, but with a different mission. Instead of pursuing the traditional ballet career she had lost, she created a new kind of performance art that celebrated difference, challenged perceptions, and proved that beauty exists in infinite forms. Her signature piece, Phoenix Rising, became a symbol for anyone who had been forced to rebuild their identity after loss. She performed it at hospitals for cancer patients, at rehabilitation centers for amputees, at schools for children who had been told they were too different to pursue their dreams. But perhaps, most importantly, Sophia kept the rose from her AGT audition. Pressed between the pages of a book in her apartment, it served as a reminder that beauty exists not despite the thorns, but because of them. That the most exquisite things are often those that have been tested, challenged, and transformed by their struggles. Simon learned something that night that changed how he evaluated every performance afterward. He realized that the most powerful talent isn't technical perfection or commercial appeal. It's the courage to transform personal truth into universal art, to stand in front of strangers and prove that broken doesn't mean worthless, that different doesn't mean less than, and that sometimes the most beautiful dances are the ones performed by people who were told they would never dance again. The broken ballerina had proven that grace has nothing to do with having all your pieces and everything to do with using whatever pieces you have to create something beautiful enough to heal not just yourself, but everyone who witnesses your transformation. It wasn't just television that night, it was a masterclass in resilience, a redefinition of beauty, and proof that sometimes the most perfect performances come from the most imperfect circumstances, danced by people who refused to let the world's definition of wholeness limit their expression of truth. In the weeks following Sophia's audition, the video of her performance became a phenomenon that transcended typical viral content. Dance studios around the world began showing the footage to their students, not as inspiration, but as an example of what true artistry looks like when it's grounded in authentic experience. The Royal Ballet School in London invited Sophia to give a masterclass to their advanced students. When she walked into the historic studio where legendary dancers had trained for generations, the young ballerinas fell silent, recognizing something in her bearing that went beyond technical proficiency. "I want you to dance like someone who has lost everything and found it again," Sophia told them. "Most of you dance like people who are afraid of making mistakes. I want you to dance like people who have survived their worst mistake and discovered it wasn't the end of your story." She taught them her adaptive techniques, not because they needed to accommodate disabilities, but because the modifications she had developed had made her a more conscious, more intentional dancer. Learning to generate power from different muscle groups had given her a deeper understanding of anatomy. "My prosthetic leg taught me things about dance that 20 years of perfect legs never could," she explained. "It forced me to become more creative, more resourceful, more aware of how movement actually works." One student, a 16-year-old named Charlotte struggling with perfectionism, asked, "How do you get on stage knowing that people might notice your prosthetic?" Sophia smiled, recognizing her younger self in the question. "I realized that hiding my difference required more energy than celebrating it. When I stopped trying to look like everyone else, I finally looked like myself. And it turns out that authenticity is more beautiful than perfection." Simon's foundation work with Sophia expanded beyond adaptive dance to include all forms of adaptive performance art. They established scholarships for young people with disabilities who wanted to pursue careers in entertainment, proving that physical difference could be an asset rather than an obstacle. Sophia showed me that diversity in performance isn't about charity, Simon explained during the foundation's first major fundraiser. It's about artistic excellence. Different bodies create different movement vocabularies. Adaptive artists aren't asking for accommodation, they're offering innovation. The foundation's first major production was a full-length ballet featuring entirely adaptive artists. Sophia choreographed the centerpiece, a pas de deux for herself and Marcus, a dancer who had been born without arms, but had developed extraordinary control over his leg and torso movement. "We don't complete each other," Sophia explained during a talkback session after the premiere. "We complement each other. My prosthetic leg and his missing arms don't make us whole together. They make us uniquely capable of creating movement that no one else could create." Emma, the 12-year-old who had written to Sophia, grew into a confident young performer under the foundation's mentorship. By age 16, she was teaching younger students and had developed her own signature style that incorporated the mechanical precision of her prosthetic into flowing organic movement patterns. "Miss Sophia taught me that my leg isn't a limitation to overcome," Emma would tell new students. "It's a design element to incorporate. When I stopped trying to hide it and started featuring it, my dancing became uniquely mine." Sophia's collaboration with technology companies resulted in the first prosthetic specifically engineered for ballet, featuring a specialized ankle joint that could achieve the extreme plantar flexion required for point work while maintaining stability needed for complex choreography. But beyond the technological innovations and foundation work, Sophia's most important contribution remained her performances. Each time she took the stage, she challenged audiences to expand their definition of beauty, grace, and artistic excellence. Her signature rose, the one she had carried onto the AGT stage, became a symbol that she incorporated into every major performance. Sometimes she would begin pieces holding it, sometimes she would discover it during the choreography, but always it represented the same truth, that beauty exists not in spite of thorns, but because of them. "The rose is beautiful because it's vulnerable," Sophia would explain to interviewers. "Perfect things aren't beautiful because they don't need our protection, our care, our recognition of their courage in existing." Years after her AGT audition, Sophia was invited to return to American Ballet Theatre as a guest artist for a special performance commemorating dancers who had overcome career-threatening challenges. Standing in the wings of the Metropolitan Opera House, where she had once thought her career was permanently over, Sophia felt the full circle of her journey. She performed Phoenix Rising on the same stage where she had danced as a principal artist, but this time with the knowledge that her current artistry was deeper, more authentic, more powerful than anything she had achieved in her previous career. The standing ovation lasted 12 minutes, but for Sophia, the most meaningful moment came afterward, when a young dancer approached her at the stage door. "I'm having surgery next month to remove a tumor in my leg," the dancer said. "The doctors say I might lose some range of motion, that my career might be affected. Watching you perform tonight, I realized that might not be the end of my story, it might just be the beginning of a different story." Sophia smiled, remembering her conversation with Dr. Santos years earlier, understanding that her journey had always been about more than her own recovery. "Different doesn't mean less," she told the young dancer. "It just means you'll have to become more creative, more intentional, more authentic, and those things will make you not just a better dancer, but a better artist." The broken ballerina had learned to dance again, but more importantly, she had taught the world that brokenness could be the beginning of a new kind of wholeness, that limitation could inspire innovation, and that sometimes losing what you think defines you is the only way to discover who you really are.